Good evening. It is Monday, January 27th, 2025, a whole brand new year. And it has been a long time since we have been with you, but I am Brian Holloway, your host for tonight. And the Aggie Pridecast is back. And my guest for this evening is our athletics director, Mr. Earl M. Hilton III. It has been a while since we have been with you. A lot is happening and Aggie Athletics since the last time we spoke with you, and here to break it all down, make all sense of it, and make us all easy about it is Mr. Hilton himself, our esteemed leader of North Carolina A&T Athletics. But Earl, a lot going on within the world of college athletics, a lot going on within our world, our small little world of college athletics. But I kind of wanted to start out with just some of the great things that are going on. Your bowling team defeated number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and the 8th ranked team in the nation twice this weekend. Such a big bounce back for the North Carolina A&T bowling program. They used 2 freshmen. The great news about it is they really utilized 2 freshmen to get that job done. Went 11-2 at the Prairie View A&M Invitational over the weekend. When you see something like that from one of your premier programs, what went through your mind?
Oh yeah, and you hit all the highlights. I mean, fantastic weekend at the Prairie View Invitational. 2 freshmen leading the way. Finding, you got the 10th rate team in the country. When we started, I guess we're 8th right now. It's kind of silly to talk about them finding their feet because they're the 10th ranked in the country and the team in the country already, but really seem to be finding their stride and coming together as a team in a way that we knew they were capable of. And certainly Coach Kearney and her staff doing just a fantastic job preparing these young women, putting them in position to be successful and giving them the tools they need to handle the pressure. And you mentioned, taking out the top 5 this weekend in head-to-head competition certainly bodes well for the future, not only this year, but long-term, the future of the program. Very excited about where we are with women's bowling.
No question about it. Talk about what you see as the future of women's bowling. Certainly one of those programs that are, constantly within the NCAA tournament, perennial MEAC power. They missed their chance at a 4-peat a year ago, but certainly every year they go in as the MEAC favorite. And, you look at the landscape of it, Jacksonville State won the national championship last year. So it's certainly something that is an attainable goal. How do you see bowling folding itself out over the next few years?
Yeah, certainly. I think every year when we begin, I'm looking for a natty with bowling. And that's no secret to Kim.
I'm impressed with the term natty. I like that. I didn't know you had it in your bag. Okay.
And bowling's one of those sports that's going to be impacted by the House settlement with the expansion of rosters. And so we expect to fully fund her in that space so that she can go out and get 2 or 3 more student athletes for us that will make us, we expect, even more competitive. That's one of the programs that we build for national prominence, and we expect to support them in that way. And as I mentioned earlier, that's no secret to Coach Kearney that's my expectation every year, is that we are always in the mix for a national championship in women's bowling.
What is normally her reaction to that? I mean, that's not lightweight stuff there, man.
She handles it well.
Natties are hard to come by.
Yeah, they don't give those away. Well, she's a multi-time national champion herself, and so she understands it, even better than I do in terms of what price has to be paid for that to occur. She bears up under that burden well, because that certainly is the weight of expectation that we put on her, that I put on her, because clearly she's capable of doing it, and the young women she recruits clearly capable of competing in this space. And I think we would do ourselves a disservice if we thought anything less of our potential there.
Well, certainly when you're an 8-time Hall of Famer, you didn't get there by, not understanding.
You didn't stumble out of bed and do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And certainly some more Hall of Fames might be, come our way when you talk about MEAC and you talk about North Carolina A&T and what she's been able to accomplish here as a coach. So, she may be adding to that number. So you certainly, like you said, that those accolades don't come easy, and you have to compete and know what it means to compete in order to get there. You mentioned the word settlement. I think, that may slip past some of our viewers a little bit, but just kind of want you to dive into that, because like I started out with earlier, the dynamic of college athletics is changing, seems like almost every day.
Feels like
you're having to keep up with all those different changes and what all that means for North Carolina A&T. So just kind of dive a little bit into what you mean by settlement and maybe what that means for us as an athletics department.
I'd be glad to be. Are you okay if I just circle back one more time to women's basketball? Currently right now, number one.
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. Just let me guide you here.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave them there. Okay. Settlement, house settlement. Yeah, we've talked about it before, certainly on this program, and it continues to roll forward. Anticipate that by April, we'll have some clear direction from the judge in that case about the certification of the class and the acceptance of that settlement negotiated between the defendant conferences, the Power 5 / Power 4 and the NCAA. And that, as you mentioned, continues to be the elephant in the room in every conversation about the NCAA right now. Related to that, of course, is NIL and the transfer portal, which again, continue to be, I guess, the three-headed monster that we're talking about with NCAA in terms of learning how to operate in those spaces. It's not just departments or institutions, certainly the young people, the student athletes, current student athletes and prospective student athletes finding their way through this new world of college athletics, and everyone hopefully landing in a place where they're set up for success as a student and as an athlete, and certainly institutions who expect to provide opportunities for young people to matriculate, get college degrees, compete successfully, and move forward with their life. And so there are a lot of balls in the air, a lot of moving parts. We expect, again, more clarity to be available beginning officially in April. My gut now is that the settlement's likely to be approved. We're certainly setting ourselves up institutionally as if it is going to happen from a scholarship or from a roster management perspective, and from a interaction with our student athletes and how we can be involved directly in the provision of NIL resources to them. We're posturing ourselves with the expectation that settlement will be approved, but certainly more to come in that space as it develops.
Does that change the dynamic of what we can offer in terms of grant and aid? Does that affect any of our sports programs, especially as you talk about some of those male programs? How do you see that folding out? Not trying to make you Nostradamus.
No. Yeah. No. So, historically, the NCAA has had scholarship limits. FCS football had 63 scholarships. They could spread over 85 bodies. Men's track had 12.6, and you had to spread those 12.6 scholarships over the balance of your men's track team, which could be 40 guys if you're going to be competitive in that space. They're going away from a scholarship limit to a roster limit. So the new roster limit for men's track will be 45, and you can scholarship everybody on the roster. And so if a school chose, you could have 45 men on your men's track team, and you could give each one of them a full ride scholarship. So that goes from 12.6 to the potential of 45. I don't know if or who might be in that space in terms of going the full 45, but that potential exists with the House settlement. So yes, it will change scholarship allocations. It will change opportunities. Now, the flip side of that is if you had 60 men on your men's track program last year, and 45 of them were walk-ons who just wanted to run for you, they enjoyed track, they liked being at your school, you're now limited to 45. And so 15 of those young men can no longer be on the roster. So there certainly is that compression of roster spots. The good news is anybody who's on the roster can be scholarship. The bad news is there is a roster limit. And so there will be that compression of opportunities, perhaps. And you, I think, correctly alluded to men's Olympic sports as being the point that is most likely to feel that pain first. If schools get pressed for resources and they're trying to decide how to allocate scarce resources, that might be the place they would look first, is how do we save money in these spaces, and those opportunities potentially go away for a number of young people.
Yeah. It sounds like that potentially really has an effect maybe on baseball. When you look at the number of arms that you have to have in order to be successful in baseball, and I don't know what their new roster limit would be.
35, but, if I remember correctly, 35.
And that may really kind of limit maybe how many hitters you get for so many pitchers. It just kind of really changes your dynamic there a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't need to check, but I think Coach Hall routinely operated in that 38 to 41 kind of area in terms of numbers. Again, you had 11.7 to spread over those 35, but you could carry as many as you wanted on your roster. With this new settlement, he'll have to cut that 35. He'll have to, and so there will be potentially some young men who play for us or have played for us that won't have a roster spot that we can provide for them. That will impact existing people on our roster. It obviously will impact young men coming out of school, freshmen who would expect to land and find a roster spot on a college campus somewhere. They may find that difficult, or more difficult than it was in the past.
Does that give certain people a competitive advantage based on resources, the roster limits, or do you see us still being competitive in that space, especially as it pertains to our conference, the Coastal Athletic Association?
Yeah, that's two questions. Let me see if I can do the first one. I think clearly high resource institutions will continue to have advantages. That won't be new. They will continue to enjoy those opportunities that come from having substantial financial resources. Do I think we can continue to be competitive in our conference and in the NCAA generally? The answer is yes. And I believe that we are unique among many institutions. I believe we have the opportunity, because of our culture, our values, our ideals, to distinguish ourselves from a number of institutions, and that we have successfully and will continue to successfully recruit young people who want to be part of who we are, who want to be part of A&T, the family that is A&T, the culture that is A&T, and will view that as a higher value proposition than perhaps extra money they could have received going somewhere else. I think we can differentiate ourselves. I think we have historically. I think we need to be more intentional about that moving forward. But I think we have a number of advantages in this space that will allow us to continue to position ourselves for success, even against higher resource institutions, because of what we offer that's outside of a spreadsheet.
We are here with Mr. Earl Hilton. Already a great conversation. And we promise we're going to get to women's basketball,
Sorry, B.
really soon. But it's a compelling conversation, because where does the fundraising piece come in all of this? Because you mentioned higher resource institutions, which should always be, for various reasons, TV contracts, all those kind of things. But where do you see the fundraising piece really trying to play a role here? And does that change your goals in terms of fundraising for A&T Athletics?
In some ways it does. Certainly this change in the playing field may shift our focus slightly to an NIL focus perspective, as opposed to facilities as our number one priority. Facilities clearly has to be part of our conversation, but our immediate need is to be competitive in the NIL space. And I expect that we need to be in that place by fall of 25. Now, the good news is I am confident. I know that we have leaders among our A&T alumni who have stepped forward and will step forward to help us fill that gap. We do not need millions of dollars to be successful in this space. We do need some money. We do need some dollars. Coaches need to be able to say to a young person, we can meet this financial need for you. We can play in this space. But we don't need a $10 million contract. And I am confident, I know that we have leaders among our alumni and in our community who have and will step up to help us fill that space so that we can be competitive from an NIL perspective, with the additional blessing that we have from a culture, from a values, from an ideas perspective, from an experience perspective that, again, is incomparable. And I would stack us up against any institution in America, HBCU or PWI, in terms of the experience you can have at A&T. I think it's unique. And I think with the resources that I know will come for NIL, that have come and will come, and the opportunity to matriculate, to grow, to learn at A&T, I think we will be eminently successful in this space.
It's always about that Aggie pride and that
it is
A&T interlock and all that means and what it means to folks not only in Greensboro but throughout the country. And I think that is an important thing to point out by you. Are we in the realm where right now where the Power 5 or Power 4 or whatever you want to call it, is that now professional sports?
I'm going to try not to step on that landmine, B.
Sorry about that.
No, it's a fair question. It's an honest question. I wish I had a nuanced answer. I think I'll be able to speak more clearly to that in the next couple of years as this shakes out. But it remains to be seen how much of the student identity will survive this change in funding. I mean, we've talked about rosters, we've talked about NIL, we haven't even talked about revenue sharing and the $22 million that schools will be able to provide to their student athletes, and what that will do, what that has done and will continue to do in the marketplace. I'm idealistic enough to believe that we'll continue to retain the student athlete model. That's my hope. I also know that when you begin to funnel this much money into an activity, it changes the nature of the activity. And so it remains to be seen if it can survive as a student athlete, academically driven model, or if it will transition or morph into something else.
Another potential landmine here, just kind of want to get your thoughts on it. If you had your druthers and you were maybe in control 15, 20 years ago, would you have done something to could maybe have the forethought of doing something, maybe allowing young people to have control of their name, maybe an insurance policy for those who graduated, something that was in the mix that rewarded these young people for driving this type of revenue, especially at the, certainly at the power levels, to where we're not into this space right now. We're probably into a better space. Would you have done something you think differently? If you
and hindsight, of course, it's unfair to look back, but the straight answer is yes. I would love to believe we could have done something differently 2 or 3 decades ago to avoid the situation we're in right now. I think we knew this was coming as early as 20 years ago, that there was going to be a need to share some of the benefits, the financial benefits of sponsoring Division I athletics with the athletes who produce that value for the institutions. I wish that we had addressed that in a much more systematic way and a much more structured way, so that we could have, over time and with deliberation and forethought, crafted a system that's more equitable and fair. They would have had notice. We would have given kids years to prepare for this, and as opposed to days and hours. I wish that we had gotten to a place where athletics was not so separate, so distinct, so divorced from the academic mission of institutions. It's easy to say more presidential control of athletics, but I think that we could have saved ourselves. We could have saved ourselves from ourselves if we had insisted at the highest levels on maintaining the academic mission of even college athletics and been focused on using the entrepreneurial success of these departments, because some of these departments have been wildly successful financially, hundreds of millions of dollars a year they're generating for their institutions, and more power to them. The market rewards success, and they are being rewarded. But if we could have deliberately and intentionally, as an organization, as an association, directed those resources, at least deliberately directed some of those resources back to the institutions, to the academic missions of the institutions, I think we could have perhaps steered ourselves around, or at least more gracefully through the current mess that we're in.
We're here with Earl Hilton, dropping his thoughts on just the new landscape of college athletics and all that it means, not only from a national basis, but just for us right here in Greensboro, North Carolina, as it pertains to all of this. I have a question about from ODB about do we have fundraising goals for NIL? Are they established yet, or is it a race is it an arms race at this point?
We are in the process of developing a new Aggie Athletic Foundation strategic plan. We looked at the first draft of it last week. There are monetary goals in that plan. I don't want to get ahead of the AAF in terms of announcing those dollar amounts, but there are definitely NIL dollar figures in that plan. So I would think by our conversation later this semester, early summer, we'll be able to speak specifics about what those look like.
No question. So we'll get away from the dollars and cents a little bit and get it back to, student athlete level in terms of, to your point earlier, women's basketball, certainly 7-1 in the CAA, had a 8-game winning streak snapped, last week at Monmouth, but they were on a roll, certainly, and they were not a surprise to people. I mean, they were the CAA favorites coming into this thing. First, let's start there. What did it mean to you back in October, November, to see that one of your programs, 2 years into this mix, 3 years into this mix, was already considered, one of the premier programs in the league?
Absolutely. Certainly a validation of what we have believed all along, is that we can compete in this space. Now, the CAA Women's Basketball League is tough. And if you, as we learned Friday night, if you don't bring your A game every night, you can get beat. And we did. And Monmouth played really well. I was at that game and saw it, and we lost that game. But to have it recognized by our peers as, at least before the season began, as the top in the conference, quite an honor to be selected in that space. And certainly, again, speaks volumes about Coach Rob and his staff and the group of young ladies that they've put together, and how these young women have worked over the course of the summer and over the course of the last several seasons to put themselves in a position where, when the other CAA member institutions look at them, they say, "We think you're the best in the league." That's quite an honor. We certainly hope that the results play out that way, but at least in October, when people looked, they said, "We think you're the best in the conference." And so that quite an honor to receive that kind of nod, again, from your peers.
Don Corbett won 254 games here. His name is on our basketball court. Certainly Kyle Irvin the same. Coach Robinson now, I think he's around 240.
Winningest women's basketball coach in our history. Yeah.
Absolutely. where do you think he ends up? I mean,
We have the
he's got,
Robinson, Corbett, Irving.
yeah,
Corbett.
that's right. Yeah, because he's about maybe 15 wins away from a company, and understanding they're different programs, but we've kind of been in that space with NCAA in terms of these women's coaches also being their records being synonymous with the men and all those kind of things.
Sure.
Yeah, if he goes 254, 255, I mean, certainly his legacy is cemented.
Absolutely, and I hope that's a problem we have this season. I hope we have to have this conversation in March about, okay, he's done it. He's our winningest coach in basketball history. How do we appropriately recognize and commemorate and solemnize that achievement? Because T-Rob's got a lot of good basketball left in him.
Yeah, he's a young guy.
He's
really
a young guy.
guy.
He's got plenty of basketball left in him. We're delighted to still have him. Love the way that he recruits and develops our young people. But I think you asked a valid question, and it's one I'm gonna ask you to help me with as we get into that space, either late this semester, early next semester. How do we appropriately recognize the body of work that he's done and will continue to do for us in this space? Because remarkable. What is it? It's 13 years, 14 years that he's been here?
13, yeah.
13? Yeah.
In his 13th season, yeah.
Incredible work, consistency, and hard choices and decisions, and remaining true to his goals and his standards have brought us to this place where he's routinely winning 15, 18, 20 games a season, which is just such a blessing to us and to our young women.
No question. And if you look at his record since we left the MEAC, it is absolutely fabulous. I mean, it has really been, I think, man, I'm going off the top of the head here, but this is what I do for a living. But I think he's 30-13 in conference play since leaving the MEAC. And so certainly nothing has fallen off with that program. And so you think about, the incredible, consistency that has come despite who he's playing. Forget the competition. It has to be, and it is amazing how he gets his young people ready. Sometimes they start slow. I think this year.
That's right.
And then they just find a way. They start to light it up, and certainly now they are into a good rhythm here.
Yeah, it's a testament that he persuades them to trust the process. Just stay with the program, stay with the process, and it will work for us. And he's persuaded them that, we're going to have some hiccups perhaps in the first part of the season, but if you just stay with the process, trust the process, it will pay dividends for us as we get into latter part of December and January, February, and get into tournament time. He's proven that, demonstrated that kind of a cycle year over year. And so we're seeing it again, and certainly hope that it persists for the next 6 or 8 weeks.
Sitting here talking with Mr. Earl Hilton. A little track and field for you. Jason Holmes, one of the best hurdlers in the country. Yeah. Certainly one of the better 200 meter runners in the country, and one of the best hurdling programs, the North Carolina A&T track program, altogether. When you think about Thomas Smith IV, on the women's side, Luciana Weaver, they've done a great job with the hurdling program there, and then certainly they had a good weekend in Winston-Salem this week. And how much do you think about what Alan Johnson had to come in and do, considering? And I don't think I'm being exaggerating here. He was replacing a guy who had become legendary in Dwayne Ross, and he's kind of righted the ship a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Coach Ross moved to Tennessee. A great opportunity for him. What do you take? 4 or 5 All-Americans with him? Yeah. I mean, that you don't replace those overnight. And Coach Johnson has been so steady and so consistent and willing to put in the work to build the program the way he wants to build it, structured around the young men and young women that want to run for him. And we're beginning to see that pay off in spades for us. He's beginning to, as you suggest, right the ship. We never went far off the rails, but he's beginning to build us back to a place where we can expect to be nationally prominent, certainly in some individual events, but begin to score points again as a team, and hopefully get back again. This is one of those programs that I count on having a national presence, and Coach Johnson is justifying the faith that we had in him to be able to build that back for us, the foundation that Coach Ross established, the reputation that he built for us, and Coach Johnson is certainly adding to that legacy.
No question. One more before we get into what people want to talk about, football. The big skin. But you had the CAA Coach of the Year. We can't forget that as we talk about all the accomplishments that we've had in the league so far. CAA Coach of the Year in volleyball. And then you also had the CAA Rookie of the Year in volleyball for the second straight year, which is a testament to the recruiting going on in volleyball. And they also qualified for the postseason tournament, which is not easy to do in that league. Talk about just kind of how that has kind of worked out for us. Another women's program that is doing very well at North Carolina A&T.
I'm glad you brought volleyball up. Again, another example of a coach who has been consistent and put in the work, the heavy lifting that's required to build a program and to recruit and develop the young women that will fit his style of play and that will allow us to be competitive in the CAA. And again, examples of young people who trust the process, who believe the coach enough to say, we're going to stick with it, we're going to do this, and trust that it will work out for us. And we're beginning to see, Mackenzie, a former student athlete who played for Coach Clifton is now coming back as an assistant coach. So it's beginning to feed on itself as we develop this culture in our women's volleyball program that I believe will set us up for sustained success in this space. Again, there's no reason we cannot be competitive year over year in our women's volleyball program. And I'm very happy and appropriately mentioned Coach Clifton in this space and his staff and the commitment that his young women have made to pay the price to be good in volleyball.
The question becomes, who wins the first CAA championship?
I'm monitoring it. Yep,
yeah,
I'm watching it.
We got to see how all that turns out.
That's right.
Certainly, we've got some folks that are biting for that to be that pioneer to take home that first CAA championship, and it could
somebody will do it.
Football
could be.
Right. You got a new football coach. I think that is well known. We got Brenda Kearns here. She thanks you for hiring Coach Gibbs. So, thinks she's happy with that choice. No question about it. But let's talk a little bit about, we struggled. I think that is, I don't think that we're breaking any news with that so far in the CAA. How do you see football playing out as Coach Gibbs tries to enact what he can in order to kind of get things turned around?
Yeah, I mean, the CAA conference in football, we knew was one of the top conferences in the country, and it has certainly lived up to that billing. Struggle, I think, is a kind assessment. Although there certainly were games that I felt like we were in and had at least an opportunity to prevail in. I believe that Coach Gibbs he's already created an excitement and a buzz around the program, hearkening back to Coach Broadway and the success that he had. And Coach Broadway had success, and I guess this is going to be my theme for this guy. He had a process that worked about who he recruited and how he coached and the expectations that he established and how he addressed young men who did not or would not meet those expectations. And I believe Coach Gibbs will step into that same kind of idea, similar notion that there's a process that works for us at A&T. We're going to work that process. We're going to recruit young men who believe in that process, and we are going to have expectations that are established, and everybody who wants to meet those expectations is welcome to be part of the program. And if you don't, then we're really going to miss you because we're going to move
chicken. I think that's what you're saying.
Exactly. We're going to stick with chicken. That's what we do. There's a way to make it, and it tastes good when you make it the right way. And Coach Gibbs has that recipe, and so I'm excited to see what he's able to do moving forward in that space.
No question about it. And he's brought back some familiar faces. I think Tariq Cohen now is going to be a part of the program. Certainly, you look at Denzel Jones, young man who played
Tony.
Tony. I mean, you're looking at guys who Tony's on the walls down at the stadium. I mean, you're looking at guys who defined the program in the mid 2010s. They really did, and now they're back to kind of give back a little bit. You got Terry Lance, who was a part of those Broadway staffs. Mattis is also, back for another year with North Carolina A&T. So a lot of familiar faces that he's bringing in, and trying to build that culture that was here, during those heydays where we were taking home championships.
Yeah, and you mentioned, the Denzels and the Tonys and the Tariqs. They can speak about the process and the price that has to be paid to these young men in ways that you and I can't, because they, as you suggested, they lived the process. They were the athletes who defined the culture for us, who paid those prices for us to win those championships. And so when they speak to our current young men on the team, they can do so with a level of credibility that you and I can't match. And so I think that will help us significantly in our efforts to reframe the culture around winning in our football program.
When you see the relationship that Coach Gibbs has had with, especially Tariq, I think that's the one that is most notable, that relationship that they have built with one another. And certainly, if you came to that press conference, you saw a lot of former players and the love that they have for him. When you see that with a coach and that relationship with their players, what goes through your mind? What kind of vibe does that give you?
That's a great question, B. And I'm going to speak in generalities here and not about any specific coach. But there are coaches that are transactional. There are political leaders that are transactional, and there are political leaders and coaches that are relational. And when you see those young men come back and attach themselves to a coach that they had a decade earlier, what that tells me is that he built relationships that were based on relationships. They were bigger than football. It was bigger than what you can do for me on Saturday afternoon. It was about your family and your grades and your girlfriend and your car and the other issues you're struggling with, the burdens you feel as a young person. And those young people trusted Coach Gibbs with that part of their life, and he wanted to be part of that part of their life. And that's what it tells me when they come back and they support him now, is that he is that kind of coach that's focused on relationships, because this is way bigger than sports. I mean, football is a vehicle. It's a means to an end. It's an opportunity for us to help these young men get an education and set them up for life. And everybody needs people in their lives who are not their parents to help them, to guide them, to reinforce maybe what their parents have said. Young men especially need other men in their lives to say, this is important. We do this. We don't do this. These are the expectations. And if you don't meet them, these are the consequences. And that tells me that Coach Gibbs was one of those coaches where it wasn't just about what you can do for me on Saturday afternoon. It's, I love you because of who you are. And I want to get involved in helping you have the right kind of football experience, but become the right kind of man who becomes the right kind of father and husband and member of the community and continues to give and bless all of us forever. So that's what I believed Coach Gibbs was. That's who I think he is. Those 24 young men who showed up at the press conference confirmed that for me, that they feel like he cared about them, not as football players, but as men. And that's what matters to me, is that he cared about them as men.
We're with Earl M. Hilton III. talking to us about A&T Athletics. I'm your host, Brian Holloway, having a good time having this conversation. Greg Davis kind of had a football question that kind of brings me to this. He talked about football locker rooms. Are there other things from the outside? I know Coach Gibbs kind of going to take care of things from a player personnel and relationships and all those things, but there's anything from the outside that can kind of enhance, what we're doing in football, locker rooms, any facility enhancements, anything that of that nature that will help our football program.
Absolutely. And certainly locker room is one of the top ones, creating that space where the young men can live when they're not on the field, that's theirs, it's safe, it's secure, and it reflects the value that we place on them. We've invested in mental health counselors. We've invested in nutritionists. We've invested in an upgrade of the locker room over the last 3 years. But facilities will continue to be a priority for us. Football facilities, but across the department as well, upgrading our facilities so that our young people see reflected in their surroundings the pride and the appreciation that we feel for them, that we say with our mouths. They'll actually see that in how we accommodate their needs from a training, from a locker room, from a workout, from a nutrition perspective. It will reflect what we say about them and how we feel about them. So there are a number of ways that we can enhance our facilities. And again, as I referenced the AAF plan, it will have a section that talks about projects and athletics, capital projects that we will need to pay attention to over the next 3 to 5 years in order to move the department ahead in that space.
And perhaps some of the, maybe not to a large extent, but some of the lottery money will also kind of play a role in some of that, personnel and nutritionists and all those kind of things that will enhance what we do from an athletic standpoint as a whole.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. If not directly, it will certainly free up other resources that will allow us to transfer them into that space.
No question about it. And it's going to be an exciting football season. I think spring practice is coming up, certainly signing day before that, and then August 30th, Tennessee State. Really nice football schedule that is out there. Get our rematch with North Carolina Central here in Greensboro. South Carolina State comes here for homecoming, which I think is going to be really fun. That's already a rivalry in and of itself. And then, certainly bringing them here, I think that's going to be crazy for homecoming. And then, that full CAA slate. So it's going to be a fun football season.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I think, if I remember the schedule correctly, we have Hampton as our third game.
Hampton, yeah, that's right.
Coming in for that, what will be the Hall of Fame weekend. That's also going to be, I think, Chancellor Martin's inauguration week. And so we hope to cap that off with a great football game and a big win for us in Truist Stadium.
No question. And speaking of environment and homecoming and all that kind of stuff, that crowd Monday night for MLK, CBS, it was absolutely crazy. That was absolutely bananas. Shout out to all those folks who made that happen. Corbin Bradford, Billy, all those guys who.
Oh, B, you're part of that. Yeah, Brian Holloway, Billy Edgerton, Corbin, Bradford, doing the hard work, the heavy lifting behind the scenes that doesn't often get seen or appreciated. But yeah, great crowd, great look for us on CBS. An exciting game for us again, right there on the edge. We're going to get over that hump and begin to put some W's in the column for men's basketball.
They just got to been a hard luck for those guys. I mean, you lose your big man 6 games into the season, then you lose your other big man who was leading the league and may still be in rebounding.
Yes,
for 2 weeks. A year ago you missed Landon Glasper for about 10 or 11 games. It's just kind of been a just kind of like what's going on, type situation.
Yeah, you don't want to say snake bit, but it certainly feels like we've been fighting some injuries. Yeah, I mean, Stratos is doing a great job, but you hate to put all the big man duties on a freshman. He's carrying the load for the last couple of weeks with the injuries, taking so many kids out. But they're fighting, they're continuing to compete. Again, another team that's trusting the process and working with Coach Ross as they continue to grow and develop as a team and move forward into what I am certain will be a successful men's basketball program.
No question about it. We had a question about putting seats in and promoting women's sports, but Greek night will be January 31st. Friday night's coming up. I think it'll be a sellout crowd for the women's crowd.
Absolutely.
And I think when you look at it, those 3 WNIT games that we hosted, first time ever. Like we really normally never hosted postseason WNIT. That was crazy. UNC crowd was absolutely bananas as well.
I can't get over those 3 games. They were incredible.
Those are incredible. Yeah. The atmosphere, the blue seats, and how crazy they had gotten down that front. That was absolutely incredible. I think we went about 4 or 5 games with about a crowd of 3,500, 4,000 in the seats, which for women's sports is a big time growth spurt, and certainly that'll be the case against Hampton on a Friday. Just talk about your female sports and just kind of how successful they've been recently.
Yeah, we've hit so many tonight. Just so impressed with our willingness, with our coaches and their commitment to do the work, to do the recruiting and the development. So much of what we count on is the ability to recognize perhaps latent talent, undiscovered or unrecognized by others, bring it to A&T and develop it with the appropriate level of focus and attention, expectation. Being successful is an expectation. It's something that we talk about and think about, and our women's athletes and our women's teams have in large measure been able to develop themselves into competitive spaces, and not just as one-offs, but as programs. They're competitive year over year. And we certainly still have work to do. I'm excited about where we are with women's track. I'm excited where we are with softball, tennis and golf and their trajectory. But we have proven that we can identify and we can recruit and we can develop athletes in this space that allow us to compete, not just in our conference, but in several sports on a national level, which again, for a school of our size, we're in many respects punching well above our weight class.
Absolutely. A lot of questions in our chat here about facilities, indoor facilities, different types of practice field facilities. I mean, there's a lot of people with a lot of creative ideas.
I love ideas.
I really do.
Write me the check and put in the memo what you wanted to go for.
Yeah. Certainly. But from a facility front, I'm certainly, War Memorial is at the front of a lot of people's minds. Indoor facilities at the top of people's minds. What does a practice field look like from a football perspective? Certainly that is in a lot of people's minds. I saw the softball team getting ready for the season in Moore Gym. I said, that's a great indoor facility. Yeah.
Right.
So thoughts and concerns about facilities as we go forward.
Yeah. I mean, facilities and we've talked about it now for a couple of years about the need for a capital campaign. I think I've mentioned to this group that we conducted the study of what it would take for us to bring our facilities up to a peer compatible level. $420 million was the price tag that we came away with a year ago. Now half of that was a new convocation center. Half of that was a new basketball home. And so take that off the table. We're still talking about $200 million to have a Cadillac in all of our facilities, including sports that we might add in the future. None of that has gone away. None of those needs have gone away. In fact, in some ways, they've only become more urgent. We are in conversations, as I mentioned, with the AAF in terms of what we can put on the AAF's back in terms of facilities, and then what might be appropriately structured through a capital campaign of some sort. Now we've had a progression in leadership at the institution, and so there is an expectation that institutionally we will look at a campaign of some sort in the near term. And I'm making up numbers here, in the next 1 to 3 years. And so the question that we're addressing now is, should athletics try to have an independent capital campaign, a standalone, or should we position ourselves to be part of a larger university campaign that will occur in the next 12 to 36 months, 60 months, somewhere in there? That conversation is ongoing. And so that's not a great answer to anyone who's asking specific questions. The short answer, we're going to continue to work on facilities needs every day, and we're going to check off the ones that we can. The big ones that, and I'm talking tens of millions of dollars, we're going to have a more structured approach, unless someone just writes a check and says, here's $30 million to finish War Memorial, or here's $500,000 or $500,000 to do a practice track. Those will have to be, the big projects will have to be part of a structured campaign in order for us to generate the resources necessary to pull those off. Facilities is a topic that's on the top of mind every day, because that is the next piece. As we've talked about the cycle of success, right student athletes, right coaches, win championships, recruit resources, upgrade facilities, so you can attract the right student athletes with the right coaches who can graduate, win championships. And so we're in that cycle. We've talked about that cycle before. We're now in the place where we have to address our facilities if we're going to continue to spiral upward in our competitive success.
No question. And I think facilities aside, I think a lot of schools would dream of having an atmosphere that we had for Hampton and some of the other games. Even
Absolutely.
They have a better facility. There's just not a better atmosphere, environment, crowd, than when you go to a North Carolina A&T game. It has to be the envy of the league. And so that says something.
And those intangibles are what distinguish us. That's what is a differentiator for us. We've talked about Aggie Pride. We're going to need to define it. We're going to need to actually articulate what it is, because that is part of our distinguishing characteristics. We know what it is when we see it. We certainly feel it, but we're going to need to be able to articulate it clearly and plainly to prospective student athletes and to potential donors, because again, that value proposition, and it's not about money. It's about experience. It's about becoming someone new and different. That we provide at A&T is unique across any institution. And we have to be able to articulate what that is so that we can continue to encourage and invite and recruit the students, the student athletes, the professionals, the administrators, the professors to A&T that will continue to lift us, because we're not talking about just athletics. I mean, A&T is succeeding across a number of fronts, punching above our weight class across a number of activities in research. And we're talking about R1, and we're an R1 institution. I mean, that's unheard of 5 years ago, but we're in that space, and the research that we're doing and the success that our graduates are having, competing for distinguished scholarships and post-grad opportunities. So we're succeeding across a number of venues and fronts, and we expect to continue to do that. And so in athletics, we are going to articulate clearly and lean in hard on what makes us different and unique compared to any HBCU or compared to any PWI.
Yeah, no question. I mean, North Carolina A&T was at the forefront of STEM, which I think grew the school exponentially. Certainly one of the best places for Black journalists, Black media folks, with the JOMC, one of the premier JOMCs for African Americans. And so there's just so much to sell about the school when you really think about it from an academic and from a cultural standpoint. It's just it sells itself, really. And then facilities on the campus are second to none when you look at the student center and other places. So yeah, there's a lot to be excited about. Do you make renovations to Corbett? You mentioned the Convocation Center. Do you continue to make renovations to Corbett, or do you concentrate more on the new convocation?
That $420 million figure I gave you had about $10 million baked into renovating Corbett, making it more user-friendly, with the understanding the Convocation Center was likely a decade or more down the road. The plan we were talking about was through 2035 or 2037. And so the expectation would be that Convocation Center would be at the end of that cycle. And so there was an expectation that we would take $8 to $10 million and upgrade Corbett, because we continue to need a space for our basketball programs to work and compete. And so we would do both. We would invest in Corbett with the understanding that in the next 10 to 15 years, we would have a new space on campus.
No question about it. Place is exploding, man. A lot of people talking. So many folks. Just really glad you guys decided to join us. Really thankful for Mr. Hilton. Explain a little bit about where you are, why you're there, and again, what it means for A&T.
I'm just glad A&T has tolerated me for all these years.
You know, I mean, in terms of the CAA meetings and all those kind of things.
Oh, where I am physically right now.
Right now, yeah.
No, I was just going to say.
I shouldn't have interrupted.
No, people have put up with me for a while. I'm here because of the people. No, I'm in New York right now. We have CAA meetings tomorrow, twice a year. The ADs and the presidents get together for one-day meetings to talk about the state of the conference, and certainly the balance of most of our meeting tomorrow will be about the House settlement and our posture as a conference in relation to the changing environment, much of what we talked about tonight. But expect to be back in the office on Wednesday and push forward.
I want to thank everybody for joining us here. I'll let you go with this one. Are you still having fun with this?
Every day.
Yeah.
Now, there's certainly days when it's more fun than others, but I get to wake up every morning and think about how can I spend my time today to help prepare young people for success in their life beyond college. What would I trade that for? Professionally, I mean, as a work opportunity,
right.
What's better than that? Yeah.
Right. And I think the young people keep us young, you know, the interns and the ones that work in our office, you know, they keep us from getting old and thinking old. So it's certainly, you know, that's one of the pleasures of working on a college campus. And you're about 15 years in now, huh? Is that as an AD?
As AD, yeah, I think so. I think that's right.
And more than 20 years at A&T as a whole?
Some people keep sending me congratulations the last couple of days for 25 years.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it goes by fast.
But I'm only about 30, so I don't know how that happened.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. We'll end on that. You know, maybe a falsehood. We'll end on a falsehood. That'll be the best way to do that. But no, certainly appreciate your time. Certainly appreciate your response and you being candid with us tonight. I think that was enjoyable for people to just kind of be able to hear some of the things that are going on in Aggie athletics, and it's good to kind of have the Aggie Pridecast back online. And certainly we'll be joining you in the next couple of weeks. Well, actually next week, I think we have another show scheduled for February 3rd. So join us back here next week. Mr. Hilton, safe travels on the way back to Greensboro.
Thanks, Pete.
And we will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.